Hello everyone. I am Jeismer R. Alabeta, and our topic for today is all about physical disability. So, what is disability? Disability is defined as a condition or function judged to be significantly impaired relative to the usual standard of an individual or a group. The term is used to refer the individual's functioning, including physical impairment, sensory impairment, cognitive impairment, intellectual impairment, mental illness, and various types of chronic diseases. Disability is conceptualized as being a multi-dimensional experience for the person that involved body structure and functioning, activity, and participation. The classification also recognizes the role of physical and social environmental factors in affecting disability outcomes. Disabilities can affect people in different ways, even when one person has the same type of disability as another person. Some disabilities may be hidden, known as invisible disability. There are many types of disabilities, such as those that affect a person's vision, hearing, thinking, learning, movement, and mental health. What is invisible disability? Invisible disability is a hidden disability that we cannot see from the appearance of a human. It means it was hidden, but you can see it or you can feel it by their vision, by their hearing, thinking, learning, and many more. The ICF, or the International Classification of Functioning, has a classification of the health components of functioning and disability. The WHO Assembly on May 22, 2001 approved that the International Classification of Functioning, Disability and Health, and its abbreviation was classified and created in 1980 and then called the International Classification of Impairments, Disabilities and Handicaps, or ICIDH by WHO, to provide a unifying framework for classifying the health components of functioning and disability. The World Health Organization, or the WHO, published the International Classification of Functioning, Disability and Health in 2001 that covers. Covers from what? From their activity, ac- participation, body structures, body functions, personal factors, health conditions, activity limitations, functional limitations, environmental factors, participation restrictions, and the ICF is structured around body functions and structure. Additional information on severity and environmental factors. Now, let's move on to the history of disabilities that will be topic by my co-lecturer.
Good day everyone, my name is Remy P. Salapare. We will tackle about the physical disability. First, we will discuss the history of disabilities. First is the 15th century society. Society's treatment of individuals with disabilities has changed throughout history. In the 15th century, people with disabilities were viewed by society and the church as supernatural individuals who were against God. And the picture to the right shows a jester during this time period who usually had a mental or physical disability. So people with disability in this time is they have been a part of the society, but they are not always accepted. Okay, next is the 17th century society. Laws were passed called the Elizabethan Poor Laws, in which people with disabilities were labeled as helpless poor. So in these poor laws, it is a kind of law that is collection of laws serving human rights by distribution of relief goods for the poor and also for the person with disabilities. They serve, they give some they provide food, clothing, or monetary services to some impoverished and especially disabled person and even the mentally challenged citizen in this community. In the Salem witch trials, the people that were viewed as witches usually had some sort of mental disability or a lack of education. So in this 17th century, for the people or for the person with disabilities, they are lack of education. Let's proceed to the 19th century. So in the 19th century, freak shows started to become very popular, in which freaks, some of which were people with disabilities, were put on display for other people's entertainment. So in this time, freak shows very, very popular, or they steadily gaining in popularity, and the display of freaks and deformed persons was becoming common for entertainment purposes. In Dorothea, docs helped to create the first asylum for people with mental disabilities in Trenton, New Jersey. Dorothea Dox is very she is an activist who drastically changed the medical field during her lifetime in 19th century. And also, she is the first generation of American mental asylum. She is also a social reformer, primarily for the treatment of the mentally ill and the most visible humanitarian of the 19th century. Last, for the history in 20th century society. In 1908, the mental health movement in the United States began after Clifford Beers published a book about his experience in an asylum. The National Committee for Mental Hygiene was founded because of the horrible conditions in asylum. The eugenics movement began and created laws that forced sterilization, institution, and immigration for people with disabilities. So this asylum, there is a person who experienced to go in an asylum. It is the Clifford Beers. She is from the United States, and she tried to use this asylum for the experience of the mental health. So in this picture, eugenics record office. This eugenic movement began and created laws for the sterilization, institution, and immigration for people with disabilities. Now we will tackle about the classification of disabilities. There are 8 main types of disabilities that is includes types of various physical and mental impairments that can hamper or reduce a person's ability to carry out their day-to-day activities. These impairments can be termed as disability of the person to do his or her day-to-day activities. Disability can be broken down into a number of broad subcategories. There are 8 main types of disability. First is mobility or physical disability, spinal cord or SCI, head injuries or TBI, vision, hearing, cognitive learning, or psychological and invisible disability. First is mobility and physical impairment. This category of disability includes people with varying types of physical disabilities, including upper limbs disability, lower limbs disability, manual dexterity, disability in coordination with different organs of the body. Disability in mobility can be either an inborn or acquired with age problem. It could also be the effect of a disease. People who had a broken bone also fall into this category of disability. So, people who has a broken bone, broken arm, or broken shoulders, broken broken feet, it will be categorized as a physical disability. And people with disability or inborn or acquired with age problem, this category will suit to them, or the mobility disability. Next is the spinal cord disability. So spinal cord is found in our back with a long, thin, tubular structure made of our nervous tissues. Spinal cord injury can sometimes lead to lifelong disabilities. This kind of injury most occur due to the severe accidents. The injury can be either complete or incomplete. In an incomplete injury, the messages conveyed by the spinal cord is not completely lost, whereas a complete injury results in a total dysfunctioning of the sensory organs. So there are two kind of injury in this spinal cord disability. First is the complete and incomplete. When we say incomplete, it's the not complete loss of our spinal cord, but when it is kind of complete injury, all the functions in our organs or our sensory organs will be totally done or end. So in some cases, spinal cord disability can be a birth defect, like a mobility and physical impairments.
So now let's proceed on another types of disability, which is the head injuries. So head injuries is occurs from the brain due to a brain injury. So the magnitude of the brain injury can range from mild, moderate, and severe. These are the two types of brain injuries. First is the acquired brain injury, or the ABI, and the traumatic brain injury, or the TBI. ABI is not a hereditary type defect, but is the degeneration that occurs after birth. The causes of such cases of injuries are many and are mainly because of external forces applied to the body parts, and TBI result from emotional and behavioral disturbance. So next is the vision disability. There are hundreds of thousands of people that have minor to have various serious vision disability or impairments. So these injuries can also result into some serious problems or diseases like blindness and ocular trauma, to name a few. But some of the common vision impairments include scratched cornea, scratches on the sclera, and diabetes-related eye conditions, dry eyes, and corneal graft are some of the causes that can create vision disability that can cause blindness or cannot see. The next one is the hearing disability that includes people that are completely or partially deaf. Deaf is the politically correct term for a person with hearing impairments. People who are partially deaf can often use hearing aids to assist their hearing. Deafness can be evident at birth or occur later in life from several biologic causes. For example, meningitis can damage the auditory nerve of the cochlea. So deaf people use sign language as a means of communication. They use gestures or any signs like sign languages that can create communication for the deaf person. So hundreds of sign language are in use around the world. And in linguistic terms, sign language are as rich and complex as any oral language, despite the common misconception of the communication. Next one is the cognitive or learning disabilities. So cognitive disabilities are a kind of impairment present in people who are suffering from dyslexia and various other learning difficulties and include speech disorders. Next one and last is the psychological disorders. So these disorders from mood or feeling states, either short or long term. So mental health impairment is the term used to describe people who have experienced psychiatric communication. Next one is the invisible disabilities are disabilities that are not immediately apparent to others. As what I've said before, uh, it cannot seen from the appearance, from the outward appearance, but you can feel it and see it. So 10% of the people in the US have this kind of impairment. So thank you for my co-lecturer. So this is the chart where we can see the prevalence of disabilities for ages 18 and above. So there are teaching strategies that we can say. So these are teaching strategies to educate children with physical disabilities include setting up a buddy system so that another student can take notes for the student with disability. A paraeducator may be needed to act as a scribe for other in-class requirements. Specific assignments can be adjusted or modified for students. 2. A student who has difficulty speaking due to cerebral palsy may need an alternative presentation format in place of an oral presentation. Do not assume, however, that the student cannot or does not want to give the presentation. He may need more time to speak and better attention from his audience. The key is to make sure all activities included all students. Taking to the students about what he can do will help identify of students' areas of experience. The students may have become extremely proficient with the computer. For instance, due to the inability to write, perhaps he can share that knowledge with the class or show his peers how he uses and to access the computer. This can be provided ways to incorporate computer instruction into a lesson. So from education programs for people with disabilities is learn how to find local, state, and federal education programs and financial aid opportunities for people with disabilities. Your state Department of Education or your local school board are your best resources for telling you about nearby programs and answering questions about state educational rights, laws for people with disabilities. So, an Individualized Education Program or the IEP is a plan developed by a child's educators and parents to meet that child's specific educational needs. It's a foundation part of Individuals with Disabilities Education Act or the IDEA, which guarantees a free, appropriate public education to eligible children with disabilities. College-bound students with intellectual disabilities may be eligible for financial aid programs, including Pell grants and federal work-study programs. The Office for Federal Student Aid has specific information on loans, grants, and scholarship and how to apply. Social relationship, mental health, and well-being in physical disability aid systematically review from Hannah Toth, Johann Sygrist, and Christine Fekete. So, for its background, research has consistently found that favorable exchange with one's proximal social environment has positive effects on both mental health and well-being. Adults with physical disabilities may be fewer opportunities of favorable exchange and on mental health. From its conclusion, this review indicates that social relationships play an important role in mental health and well-being in persons with disabilities. Although findings are less consistent than in general population and strength of association vary between constructs, integrating persons with disabilities into social networks seems not sufficient and rehabilitation professionals together with affected persons and their peers should ensure that high quality relationship that we want. So according to Ellen G. White, our Heavenly Father has 1,000 ways to provide for us, of which we know nothing. So this is a very good reminder for everyone that God is always there for us and He will provide us for all our needs, which we never know about nothing. So it's according to LG White. So at the end of this topic, here are the references or the internet link that we concluded about what we involved or concluded in our PowerPoint. So thank you very much for listening and God bless us.